Good evening, I'm Ted Koppel, and this is Nightline. We'll look tonight at some of the choices available to a U.S. president in the event of a sudden nuclear attack. There aren't many options, and there's very little time to choose among them. We'll show you those choices and the process through which the final decisions might be made. Our guest, former National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski. Also tonight, a late update from Colombia on the eruption of the Nevado del Ruiz volcano that's killed thousands. Tonight, President Reagan spelled out his mission in the most basic terms.
My mission, stated simply, is a mission for peace.
The alternative to peace between the superpowers in this nuclear age is so horrifying that most of us rarely, if ever, confront what such an alternative might involve. What would really happen if the United States detected what appeared to be incoming Soviet missiles? How much time would our decision makers have? How sure could they be of what was happening? And by the time they were sure, what options would remain? The scenario that follows is known among war planners as the bolt out of the blue. The first hint that Soviet missiles have been launched comes here, 22,000 miles out in space, where 3 early warning satellites hover over the world's oceans. Their huge infrared telescopes detect one set of heat flares rising from the vicinity of Russia's missile fields, another from 800 miles off the coast of the United States, out in the Atlantic. Within seconds, that information reaches the North American Aerospace Defense Command headquarters deep within Colorado's Cheyenne Mountain. It is NORAD's job to determine if those flares are the red-hot glow of rocket boosters signaling a nuclear missile attack on the United States, and if so, to identify the targets.
The first response is really to begin to double-check all mechanical systems and check with sensor operators in the field, and to compare notes with other command centers receiving indications to assure that it's not a false alarm.
The satellites get set off from time to time because at different times of the year, the combination of cloud cover and the angle of the sun and all this can stimulate the satellite.
There have been false alarms before. What NORAD calls an event is underway. That's any indication that the United States may be under attack. On average, there are more than 500 events every year. Most are identified quickly. Space shots, missile tests, sometimes ours, sometimes theirs. But some have been caused by equipment malfunction or computer error.
NORAD, in my view, is sort of more like a computer museum than it is an up-to-date data processing center.
And many of the components of the early warning system, like satellite ground stations, are vulnerable to sabotage. Key radar frequencies could be jammed.
Should the Soviets, as part of their initial attack, try to interfere with the early warning signal, then it's anybody's guess as to what we're going to know about the attack.
This signal, however, is coming through uninterrupted. Within a minute, the Missile Warning Center determines its equipment is functioning properly. The assessment is flashed to the general in charge of the main NORAD command post. Hundreds of Soviet missiles may be hurtling towards North America at speeds in excess of 15,000 miles an hour. Precise numbers and targets, unknown. Elapsed time since launch, approximately 90 seconds. Highly accurate missiles launched from Russia could be destroying our 1,000 ICBMs in their silos in Montana, North and South Dakota, Wyoming, Kansas, Nebraska, within another 22.5 minutes. More immediately threatening, those fired from the Atlantic, undoubtedly launched from submarines, capable of striking Washington, D.C. and other coastal targets in less than 9 minutes. Within seconds, a secure conference call is established between NORAD, the Strategic Air Command in Omaha, Nebraska, and the National Military Command Center at the Pentagon. 3 minutes after presumed launch, the SAC commander, in charge of all U.S. bomber and ICBM forces, orders a precautionary alert.
SAC, stand by for a message for your forces.
At Air Force bases across the country, B-52 crews scramble to prepare their planes for takeoff. There are fewer than 100 on alert. Airborne command posts and the president's so-called doomsday plane are ready. A helicopter is ordered to the White House in case the president needs to be evacuated. And in underground control centers spread through Minuteman missile fields, launch crews prepare their missiles for firing. And high above, circling the central United States, the general aboard the aircraft codenamed Looking Glass is informed of the situation. One of these planes is airborne at all times, manned by a full battle staff capable of relaying or even initiating the order for U.S. bombers and missiles to retaliate. The Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense are briefed. Despite all this activity, the president has not yet been notified. Time elapsed since launch, 3.5 minutes. No one is willing at this point to say for sure that an attack is underway, based solely on the satellite information. Ironically, on NORAD's big screens, the satellite heat signals are fading as the rocket boosters burn out, hurling their payloads into the darkness of space.
Decision makers would be held in suspense, waiting for confirmation of that attack from ground-based radar systems.
Confirmation of a Soviet land-based missile attack from radars in Greenland, England, and Alaska won't come for another 6 minutes. But a powerful radar on Cape Cod is already picking up reflections from incoming objects high above the Atlantic Ocean. Within a minute of the sighting, the NORAD commander makes his judgment. The heat flashes and radar returns are submarine-launched warheads, headed for the United States. Time elapsed since launch, 5 minutes. Precise targets are still unknown, but it must be assumed that Washington, D.C. and the nation's top leadership are threatened. Impact could be only 5 minutes off. The Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense are immediately notified of NORAD's assessment. The president is finally alerted. An all-out military alert is sounded. At 36 SAC bases, B-52s and tanker aircraft begin screaming down runways only a few seconds apart. Missile subs in port scramble available crews and prepare to put to sea. Airborne command posts take off, including the president's from its base in Indiana. At the White House, the president consults with his military advisors. Can he still attempt to evacuate Washington by helicopter and try to rendezvous with his emergency airborne command post?
There's simply no way in 4 or 5 minutes that the president can get from the White House to Andrews Air Force Base or to any other nearby Air Force base.
In fact, at this point, only 3 minutes remain before the first Soviet warheads impact. The president turns to his military aide, who always accompanies him carrying the football, a briefcase containing the strategic war plan and the secret codes for ordering a nuclear launch.
The information in his little black bag about what to do is so complex that no one who had not regularly sat down and practiced and been briefed, which is something that our president has not done, could possibly, know on the spot, if he were called to this test, what to do.
He has only a few minutes to make decisions based on warning information that still has not told him the precise nature of the Soviet attack, including the number of weapons or their targets. Over Canada, the first B-52s are entering holding patterns, waiting for the order to begin their bombing runs.
Flight to all. Flight is all. Launcher to all. Launcher is all.
In the missile control centers, launch keys are inserted, awaiting a final order.
Waiting launch indications.
A scenario similar to the one we've just seen was outlined by former President Carter's national security advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, in an article he wrote for the Wall Street Journal. Mr. Brzezinski raised a number of pertinent questions. Among them, how in these circumstances would the president perform? How effective would the chain of command be? In the face of such unbelievable information, what kind of rational choices could still be made? We'll discuss those and other questions with Zbigniew Brzezinski when we return in just a moment.
This